Hey everyone, welcome back to CIDDL and our office hours. We're doing a bit of a different office hours today, and what we're going to do today is kind of engage with you all. We're also going to have a conversation about hot topics in AI, and this is in reference to. I'm going to scroll to our website here. So, as many of you know, about a year and a half ago, or a little over a year ago, we put out a 100-page publication that kind of tried to summarize some of the hot topics as we started thinking about artificial intelligence and students with disabilities and supporting individuals with disabilities and preparing personnel to work with them. And if you've not had a chance to go ahead and look at that, this would be a good opportunity to download it, etc. But as we went into CEC this year, the big, field-based conference, a lot of conversation was taking place there around AI and the need to update that publication because so much has changed. In fact, just this morning, I'm preparing. I teach a class on Tuesday evenings around artificial intelligence and machine learning, and I was updating for that and kind of making sure I had everything together and going through and just even the last week, the updates that have taken place have been incredible. So what we thought we'd do to here today is kind of start off with the hot topics sort of conversation. And what are some things that people are hearing, questioning? I know, Bob, last time you were on a couple weeks ago, you had some interesting things you wanted us to discuss. And so this is a time for you all in the community. We're also going to have a join in. But what sorts of topics do you want not only the CIDDL Center to discuss, but maybe the field in general to discuss? What are things you're hearing? Um, and we're just going to kind of open up the conversation, I guess. I know we started it in the community yesterday. I posted something, and I know one of our colleagues, Sarah Hallworth, up in Maine, said that she's getting a lot on energy consumption as a big concern. But where's everyone at, and what's kind of going on in your neck of the woods with AI? And Bob, I know you had some ideas last week. I don't know if you want to share those, but
Yeah, I got some new ideas this week, but yeah, last week I was just wondering about um, how students can utilize some of these AI supports as helping to keep them regulated, and having a thought partner for a student, and wondered if anybody was diving into that. I've got other thoughts about how staff are using AI. But I'm kind of interested first to talk about how we can help students utilize this technology to just keep them in a better space of learning.
yeah, and I think the last office hours, I guess it was a couple weeks ago when we were talking about this. The idea of self-determination kind of came into play there, self-regulation, as you kind of brought up. These are all hot topics, and I know uh, Teddy Kim, who's on the one of our research assistants, he's that's a topic he's near and dear to him. It's kind of a research area that he's getting into. So that those are really good topics I think we should deal with. I don't know if
I know there's a couple of organizations or groups, APA as well as school site groups that are diving into this. They're trying to align specific LLMs with frameworks of support so that they're validated. But right now, we don't have something commercially available or even research back that I would recommend. I know that there's a lot of emerging research in this particular area, but happy to hook you up with those folks that are engaged in some of that research.
yeah, I think that'd be good. And it's
No,
also areas that we should probably be looking in.
no, I'll piggyback. I mean, I was up with a school just last week that I'd have to say they're above average in their AI use. It's a high school, and they're very much as they get into finals, and finals don't start for them until May, but very much student initiated. They're looking at everything for executive function, for studying, for organizing their memory, and everything from they've started using. I mean, Magic School has had student initiated, and there's several out there that. And they're also trying to create some bots within AI. And it was interesting. They've been talking teacher initiated their entire year. We've been working with them for the last year. and they've really taken a focus on students in preparation for finals. So,
Yeah, I think one of the things that I was kind of seeing if we could find it real quick, Sean, but I think about I was thinking about that graphic you offered during the workshop that we did at CEC,
oh, sure, I have that.
the teacher initiative. I think we have it right here. I'll try and pull it up, but
Good.
the different types of AI that are critically important and the way we think about its usage from teacher
Compared to student and
Student and-
potentially combined.
and combine initiated, and like where those things are. And I think that's something as we think about going into the future of what our center has to do
Yeah.
is kind of talk more about those different models out there.
I honestly think the field, I wouldn't be surprised if next year when we're working more with our K-12 folks, they're going to be talking more student versus teacher.
Hey,
At least
Jamie,
in certain schools.
could I piggyback on that? I'm reviewing 82 applications from Utah from school districts across the state. And one of the themes that's coming out is what is effective student use of AI and what are the types of use? Some of them are very teacher oriented where they actually do kind of put a garden or a walled garden around it. Others is really open. And so these teachers, these administrators who are submitting, were actually talking about rubrics of what is a rubric of an effective use of AI by K-12 students for these various areas. And they're looking at kind of a continuum of how much self-determination, if you will, there was across those uses.
Yeah, I think that's a good thing. I think one of the things is we're kind of moving into this. I mean, a lot of the traditional forms of education would be, I always say this, more teacher initiated, purely teacher initiated. I think as we start moving towards more student initiated and jointly initiated, it's going to open up some new models. We were just talking about that slide that we offered at the workshop a few weeks ago in Baltimore at CEC. If people are interested in learning more about this, if you're on watching us and you didn't see this in one of the CEC presentations, feel free to reach out. But we do a lot of conversation around this, and a lot traditionally, like we said, Cheryl, we do a lot around teacher initiated, but I think this either jointly initiated and student initiated, all three of these are going to become important in the future. Yeah. And then how do we measure that?
Could I just add one more comment about it? The other thing that they really were looking for is in the student initiated and kind of the jointly initiated too. What are some methods for them to document, for the students to document,
Yeah.
so that the teacher has a sense of how much of the assignment was done by AI versus the student and how the student actually used it. And whenever I was at a conference up there a couple months ago, and whenever that question was asked, there was like deer in the headlights. They don't really know how to do that, how to have students do that documentation.
Yeah.
Carol, we don't even have the ability. So this was also a conversation at the ATP conference, not around students, but actually around copyright and patents.
Yeah.
And the reality is that we have zero infrastructure to differentiate. So there's someone at the patent office who makes a determination of how much human in the loop is enough to grant a patent or a copyright or anything.
Have they created a
trademark.
formula or
There's no formula.
Oh,
It's
wow.
literally open to
in
interpretation.
person?
And that's at the highest levels of business. And then we go down to students. There's not even a guidance document. This is what it is. And, I think one, your question about measuring like performance, but then two, how do we change education so that we really start, maybe the question of how much is not the right question.
Right.
Maybe it's do I have an understanding conceptually and or deeply about what I'm doing? And yes, that this machine is helping me construct something, but I can tell you every single step it takes to get to this solution.
Yeah, I know. And I think we maybe talked about this a couple weeks ago in office hours, but Teddy and I are teaching this undergraduate class now where, we encourage the use of AI when we talk about it and how they use it. But we spent a long time, Urine tested it multiple times, developing the midterm. so that it would make them, it would allow them to use and respond to some case studies that we had. But then also they had to present it in a way where they were actually demonstrating how they used AI. And I think we did a pretty good job, and maybe we can down the line here show some of those. I guess we'd have to get student permission to show some of their responses. But I think we did a pretty good job at having the students say, you know, I used AI for these things. And then because they had to also record themselves doing some things, and then kind of doing some reflective talk on how they had to change the prompt to get the response they wanted and things like that. And that might be having those sort of examples as we think about the future of CIDDL and what we're trying to inform the field of. Again, and I know a lot of people are not on screen right now, but if you have questions or comments or topics you want discussed, drop them in the chat there for us to reflect on. And or if you're a community member, we'd love to see you in the community, and feel free to kind of post ideas and conversations in the community. Because as we think about the future and the future publication that we should be maybe writing about and thinking about here at CIDDL, maybe it's also kind of what are some research areas that the field needs to get into.
You know, another issue, piggybacking on what I was sharing just earlier at school, is that increasingly the schools we're hearing from is that they're still locking things down. Like I was at school where ChatGPT couldn't use it. I could use Copilot, but not ChatGPT. Yeah. But and this was more middle high school. The conversation was, okay, but they're using it at home. And so now, what are we communicating with parents? How are we communicating with parents? What's the expectation we're sharing with parents? And so there's this whole family parent aspect that they are very aware of, and they're not having solutions for. Maybe it goes back to that. Now it's more student initiated, yep. But parents are definitely helping, and that concerns.
I think the parent thing, I mean, we get a lot of questions at CIDDL around, as you guys know, around any number of topics. And the parent thing, I think, our questions, it's kind of funny for people online, we tend to get questions that come in waves. Like we get questions around how to detect AI, and they kind of come in waves of like how society's trending. I think the parents thing is something that's upcoming. I mean, I know we talked about it in the last publication.
Yeah, no, we had it. Yep.
But I think
the way we talked about is very different the way we talk about this time.
Yeah, I think so too. I think that's what I was just going to say. I think the idea that school districts really need to have, I mean, this needs to be a community driven. I'm imagining school communities. And when I say school communities, I'm imagining parents and students and teachers kind of learning about this stuff together. I think is an important thing.
I do think there's space though. So as the resident early childhood person, this conversation about families and caregivers, I do think there's space for sharing knowledge around caregivers being able to access information using AI as a tool. You know, we're a bit reluctant in early childhood to suggest that toddlers, infants, and preschoolers are going to directly use AI. But I think that there is space in this interaction model to consider our teaching assistants, interdisciplinary partners, caregivers. How are we, you know, perhaps we're trying to consider how students are using AI in the K-12 space. Our consideration is exclusively what you talked about, Sean, in the early childhood space, is how do we support caregivers to know what information are you receiving? Is it culturally sustaining for your family? Is it relevant to what your family does? Is it information that is trustworthy? Because at the end of the day, we're making decisions for the tiny humans. It's a big, high stakes activity where something is telling me I need to do this with my child every day. That's hard in the context of a caregiver family schedule. And so I think we do definitely have more space there to better understand. Do we build GPTs that are directly supportive for families of young children that then can become a trustworthy space? And as families enter in their ideas, I think there's space to consider how are we bridging the knowledge that caregivers and families bring and the knowledge that our early childhood providers bring into this centralized space.
Yeah, I like that point. Because that's also one that we did. Crystal posted something here in the
transition program, sure.
Yeah.
Transition programming, yeah. And accessibility to support Title II updates would be good. Yeah, I think that's another area that would be big to.
So, it isn't just as earlier this week or last week, you folks did a little presentation,
Oh, on Friday. Yeah.
and it makes me think of Nolan. I said Nolan, who's still transitioning. He's 24, but he offered about the old AI in terms of his use of Siri, Alexa, which during his little presentation, Alexa started talking to him because he said,
Yeah.
Alexa. Sorry for you folks I just said Alexa. I hope it doesn't cause Alexa to talk to you. But that critical that has been the current AI, let alone the Chat GPT or
Yeah.
previous AI, in the support of the type of transition skills we need, time, planning, things of that nature. So
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good question. What are some other sort of topics that need to?
So Jamie, in Baltimore, you guys showed the chat bot for high leverage practices that you had just recently
Yep.
created, and I got to trial that, and I was really impressed with what that produced. And I'm sorry, I'm going to ask you a question that I should know the answer to, but I lost it somewhere. There was a course or a some resource for people that wanted to learn about creating their own chat bot or personalizing chat bots for specific topics or content. Um, I'm interested in how we inform the chat bot to focus on a specific content. So is that a different course I can look to, or maybe
We
you
can
can just
produce.
briefly describe how you developed it for high leverage practices? But I've got a follow-up question on that, but I just didn't know where to go for that question.
Yeah, Bob, I think what we said is we're going to produce one of these sessions on it. We've not done that yet.
Okay.
We can do that real quick here. How much time is left? It's not really that difficult, actually. And I have a number of chatbots that I've kind of developed. I kind of have some for each one of my courses in many ways, but I can, do we want to take time and show that real two
Yeah, I
seconds?
mean, I think as you pull that up, one of the things that you want to get organized before you start this adventure is pull some of the resources or identify the resources you want to inform the bot. So you can do that in many ways. One of them being you download the original PDFs of a particular manuscript or manual or whatever you want. The other piece is it can do some web scraping for you, but you want to probably put in the URL that goes directly into the training program so that it references it frequently if there are updates. And if that URL changes at any point, it will break your chatbot. So you want to make sure that you keep tabs of where your data are coming from. And then you have a lot of decision points around, do you want this chatbot to access certain parts of the web? Do you want it to analyze particular data sets? And then you provide those data sets. If you are a little bit more advanced and you want to do a little bit of programming in Python, you can write some scripts and do some time tasks. For example, I have a weekly email that gets sent to me, and it's basically preprints of educational research and AI in particular journals. And so it hits APIs of these journals on a weekly basis, and it scrapes all the new information and it reads it for me. Then I have an agent that does a summary for myself and then emails me that summary. And if I like it, I can find it again. But that takes a lot more work than what Jamie's going to show you here.
Yeah, I'm just going to show you.
could you just clarify that for the break the bot in terms of you said if the link changes or something.
Yeah, so if
Just
you have
clarify.
if you have CIDDL.org, for example, and it's / high leverage practice. If for some reason when we do an update and the /HLP link goes away and it's just CIDDL, it'll break that bot because that page no longer exists. And so you just want to make sure that when you direct it somewhere that content's available.
So I'll show this one real quick, how it's made, then I'll show you kind of how to make your own. So this is the one I just sent out to people. So in my view of how to make it, you can kind of configure the name. You create emblem or a logo for it or whatever, you can also create one for you. So you give it a name, give it a description, then you kind of give it instructions, and the instructions are kind of the magic behind how they operate. And this is the thing that you get to tweak the most without programming. So you can kind of tell it how you want it to behave. You give it the type of in this one, it's a very practically focused professor. So you kind of give it its how you want it to act and what sort of person you want it to be if you've given it some sort of embodiment. Then you kind of give it some conversation starters. And then what I did is I created I literally took the while it's referencing to Trey's point, it is referencing the high leverage practice website. But then I just took the high leverage practice website and put it into PDFs. And then that's how it actually behaves. And then what you do over time is you go through and kind of configure and mix up and move the instructions around for it to behave the way you want it to. But the way you get to this here, folks, anyone could do it, and we'll do a more formalized webinar on it. But you go to my GPTs and just create a custom GPT if you're a paid user, and then you can kind of set this up. There's a blank space. And I set these up all the time. I delete them all the time for different things. In fact, if you go into my list now, here's one, in fact, that we just used in my course where we actually did an MTSS PLC um, uh, 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 simulation with undergrads. And so we created an instructional coach simulation that this is not publicly available. This is while the HLP one is publicly available, this is just not available to people I give the link to. And it's based on data that the AI had created and we used in class. So they're really simple to create. Like I said, I build them and take them down all the time based on need, but we'll do a more formal development presentation on that, Bob. But if you go to OpenAI's GPT and sign in and in your drop down menu there on the right side, you can kind of play around with it on your own and make some of your own.
Okay, that'll be great. That gives me a lot to go on. And I'm trying to create it for a college course that I'm teaching, a graduate level course that's got 17 elements in it. And so I've got the resources already in my syllabus, all of the hard
Right.
copies of stuff that I'm going to use. I could download that in right now, and that would be a
Yes.
start of it. And I also got website addresses for a lot of the resources I'm using, like for social and emotional or emotional intelligence and Castle and some of those organizations. I've already got. I got that's helpful. Thank you. I can get started, I think, on that.
Yeah, I also have some in the background, like that are just my teaching assistants for the classes, right? So they have the syllabus and kind of what the plan is, and then they also kind of know the makeup of the students, whether they're undergrads, freshmen, sophomores, etc. And we can go in and ask it, hey, I'm teaching this week. Do you have some ideas? So, do you have some ideas for the types of activities you want to do in class? And it'll do that as well.
Great, great. Hey, thank you. Very helpful.
Yeah, anytime. All right, I know we're kind of coming to the end of the recorded session of the first half hour, but what are other topics that would be, oh, there's one right there, documentation of AI, accommodations within an IEP, especially in light, yes, I see that. So and we'll have to look up, I'm not recalling that decision off the top of my head, but we'll have to look up that William and Clarksville Montgomery decision.
Accommodation.
Yeah, I'm guessing it's around IEP accommodations, but we'll look that up. And I think that generally the accommodations and accessibility sort of pieces are major discussions that need to take place. Okay. So I know we're coming to the end of the first half hour. What are other topics that people want either discussed, obviously maybe not discussed here today, but kind of as we move forward as a center?
I'll lift another one up. I don't know if you can last night I was really getting frustrated with my chat GPT, and it was like just not cooperating. It was like I've got 17 elements I'm trying to put into a certain visual. And every time I made a change or pointed out to the chat GPT that they had misspelled a word or hadn't done something correctly, didn't give me a new version that then would have more problems with it. And it was like the longer I went, it's like this GPT is getting worse the longer I'm working with it. It was just like, how do we clean it up so it doesn't make so many mistakes? And it was the first time I really got frustrated with it before, but finally I just said I'm going to reset my computer. I'm going to do a restart of my computer. Maybe it'll be a cleaner version of ChatGPT when we come back on the other side. But is there any way that you can clean up the system a little bit so it doesn't make so many? And it was hallucinating. It was putting elements into my course that were not elements that I gave it. It wasn't one of the 17. It was like they're hallucinating some new elements in here. So I didn't know how you can clean it up and so it doesn't make so many mistakes sometimes.
I know others are going to offer some better, but one to me easy one, and it got me thinking as you were talking about the various prompts you were offering it. Sometimes after a series of prompts, it's not a bad idea to actually ask ChatGPT what would be a recommended prompt. So based on the prompts you've offered and based on what you're trying to get at, what should be the prompt I'm offering? And sometimes I have found those prompts, particularly when it comes to visualizations, they're much more thorough, they're much more specific, and they will get much closer to what I've been trying to do. Of course, ChatGPT with the visual has gotten much more, what's the word I'm looking for? Sophisticated, not intelligent. I tend to lean that way. But that's one thought. If you haven't done that in the past, I think you'll be surprised at one, the depth and breadth of the prompt, as well as potentially getting you closer to what you're actually looking for. So that's one suggestion.
Yeah, well, it was just misspelled words that I was getting frustrated with. It's like, why do you keep misspelling all of these words? Finally, I got to the point where I was like, can you just give me this in an editable format and then I can do the editing myself? And then it would give me the format in PowerPoint or Google Slides or Canva. And then I wouldn't have to do the sword fight with Chat GPT anymore about misspelled words. I could just do the editing myself, is kind of where I got to last night.
What kind of visual were you trying to make?
Well, I was just trying to make a visual that showed these 17 elements in three different categories. So we've got climate, structure, and performance. And it was confusing that sometimes. I wanted different color codes for the three categories. And it usually got those right. But then towards the end, it started giving me colors that I didn't ask for and started making changes that I didn't want. And so it was almost like I felt like I was driving a car that needed an oil change or something. I was driving a car that needed some kind of engine repair or something and just was starting to not run smoothly.
My favorite for making like visual graphic representation, what are they called? Graphic organizer kind of structures is actually called napkin.ai. Have you played with that one at all?
I have not.
So it does a whole bunch of things, but you can copy paste in your text that you want. And then, hold on, let me see if I can pull one up. So
There we go.
you can
Thank you,
copy
Ted.
paste in what you want. So here's one I did. And then you can click on the little lightning bolt and it will create visuals based on your text. And it'll give you a whole bunch of options for what those visuals can look like.
Oh, nice.
But then you're not going to be fighting with the AI in the same sense. And it's cleaner. It's made to do graphics, which is makes it really easy.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's great. Thank you, Sam. That's
Yep.
awesome.
Yeah, Sam for the win. All right, everyone, we've used our half hour where we have recorded office hours, and we're going to shut off the recording if it's not been done already.